How's it going and welcome back to JamesChats. So I recently started streaming Pokemon Blue version, and I'm gonna be streaming the rest of the Pokemon Game Boy catalog if you wanna watch along. And I started getting a lot of questions about how I do it. So today I'm gonna show you all how I stream real Game Boy games. Sorry, I had to flex that I have all of these now. It took me a while to track them down. These things, they're expensive. This is like $100. Now, a lot of folks tend to opt for emulation, but the purist in me wants to experience games as close to how they were originally experienced as possible. Also, emulators tend to fall within this sort of legal gray area, so doing it my way avoids that completely. Now, this setup is very involved, and that's gonna deter some folks, but I do think it is the ultimate way to not only stream Game Boy games, but to experience Game Boy games on a bigger screen. Just a quick heads up, I will be leaving links to everything that I can get links for in the video description. First, let's go over all the things you're going to need. Do keep in mind that some of these items are optional or can be substituted out, but we'll cover that in a little bit. For now, this is my setup. A GameCube, a Game Boy player attachment for the GameCube, an original Game Boy player startup disc, or in my case, a hacked memory card, a GameCube controller, an S-Video AV cable, an upscaler like my RetroTink 2X Pro, an HDMI capture card, and then optionally a Game Boy Advance and a GBA to GameCube link cable. There's a couple of other little things, but we'll go over those as the video continues. First, let's talk about the GameCube. There's not really much to say here, although I would recommend getting the original 001 model as opposed to the later released 101 model, because the original one offers both digital and analog outputs, whereas the 101 model got rid of the digital altogether and only offers analog out. This is particularly important for those of you who only plan on using the GameCube and don't plan on using any other retro consoles. If you are that person, then I would recommend getting the original 001 model and a Retrobit Prism HDMI adapter as opposed to the upscaler setup we'll be talking about in a minute. This will probably give you the absolute best image quality you can get out of a GameCube for about half the cost of my upscaler. But it is limited to only GameCube, whereas the RetroTink 2X Pro can be used for any number of consoles. Next up, we've got the Game Boy player attachment. This is an attachment that plugs into the high-speed port on the bottom of a GameCube and houses actual Game Boy Advance hardware. This means that it can play any GBA or older game just the same way that a Game Boy Advance would. The attachment itself can be found for pretty cheap and is actually often bundled with GameCubes, so if you don't have a GameCube yet, look for a GameCube with the attachment and get them both at once. But it's useless without software. See, the Game Boy player requires a startup disc to work, and the original startup disc can be very hard to find and often goes for upwards of $100. So the better option in both quality and cost is to get a modded memory card off of eBay for about $20 and a compatible game disc. The wonderful modding community came up with ways to use games like Zelda Wind Waker in conjunction with a modded memory card to run Game Boy games through the Game Boy player. Personally, I'm using Twilight Princess because I had it, but there are much cheaper options. I'll put the eBay listing in the video description. Make sure that you check the details carefully to see what games are compatible and tell the seller what game you're going to be using before purchasing. You can also do this yourself with like a soft modded Wii and an SD to memory card adapter, but I really didn't want to bother with all of that. Now that the retro hardware has been taken care of, it is time to modernize it. Now, I already talked about using the Retrobit Prism HDMI adapter, and if that's the route you're going to take, feel free to skip to this part of the video. Otherwise, let's briefly talk about upscaling. You see, most retro consoles output an analog signal, which looks great on CRTs, but doesn't play so nice with more modern digital inputs like HDMI. To put it very simply, you need something that can accept that older signal, interpret it, and send a translated signal to whatever your HDMI destination is, whether it's a TV or a capture card. For this, I like to use the RetroTink 2X Pro line doubler. It outputs a clean HDMI signal, introduces little to no input lag, and accepts component, composite, and S-Video cables. This is important to me because I use all S-Video cables because they are much better than the composite cables that come with most retro consoles, but it's not nearly as involved as going the RGB SCART route. There are more advanced options out there like the OSSC, but I wasn't totally interested in the complexities and the added cost that comes with that. And there are also cheaper alternatives that do work, but not nearly as good. I've been using the RetroTink 2X Pro for over a year now, and I'm very happy with it. Though there's a good chance I'm also going to be getting the Retrobit Prism because I'm a sucker for fun technology. I mean, should I just do it? It's $80. I kind of wanna. And finally, you're going to need a capture card. I use the Elgato HD60S for everything, and it works fine for me. I'm sure there are other capture cards that work just as good, but I would steer clear of any of the cheap clones. All the super cheap capture cards I've tried have been massively disappointing. So that's everything you need, but we're gonna take things one step further with some optional items. First up is the GameCube to GBA link cable, which lets you use an actual Game Boy Advance as a controller. And this is what really sets this setup apart from things like the GBA Consolizer for me, because I get to play the Game Boy games on a Game Boy. And I like to use the original horizontal GBA when playing Game Boy Advance games, and the GBA SP when I'm playing Game Boy Color and original Game Boy games, because it has a similar form factor to the GBC. And of course, I am using a CRT television. In my humble opinion, there is no better way to view a retro game than on an old tube TV. This one I found on the curb. I decided to adopt it and give it a good home, but they can be found on Craigslist for free or super cheap. You will need to split the signal coming from the console if you're going to be using a CRT and an upscaler at the same time. So for this, I got a Radio Shack switcher, which had two outputs and allowed me to switch seamlessly between several different consoles. They can be a little hard to track down since they aren't manufactured anymore, but I will leave a link to an eBay search to help you find one yourself. I wish you luck. And there you have it. That's how I stream Game Boy games on Twitch. Now, what do you say we look at some samples of different Game Boy games through this setup?
Just what I needed. Lucky.
Figured I'd also show you the Game Boy camera. Is it? Oh, there we go. There I am. You can do anything with the, oh, whoa, got bright. You can do anything with this setup. Here, let's take a picture. Wow, beautiful. Look at that. I know that was a lot of information, but hopefully I was able to break it down in a way that makes sense. Like I said, this is a very involved setup, but I still think it's the ultimate way to both stream and experience Game Boy games. I mean, you can't get any better than using an actual Game Boy to control the game. And I can plug a link cable into it and trade Pokemon from the GameCube over to a Game Boy Color. I can use my Game Boy printer with the GameCube. I mean, there's so many things I can do that wouldn't be possible without this setup. All right, before we head out, let me know in the comment section down below, what is your all-time favorite Game Boy game? Let me know. Okay, that's all I got for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I will see you in the next video.